Welcome back to the Automation Podcast, the world's number one industrial automation product and technology show. Thanks to you, our audience of highly skilled automation professionals. Thank you for being a member of our audience, and thank you for tuning back in this week. Now, for those new to the show, my name is Sean Tierney of Insights in Automation, and each week I invite a new vendor to come on the show to tell us about their products and technologies. And during their presentation, I play the role of the audience, asking questions I think you might have, and as well as comments and questions I have based on my experience in the industry. And given that over a quarter of our audience listens to the show, I'll also try to call attention to any of the details and the visuals that I think the listen only audience may want to know about. Now, before we jump into this week's show, I just want to put a little notice out there. There is 6 weeks left before I go on vacation to go visit family for the holidays. And I got a lot of projects I'm working on that I have to finish up before the end of the year. So I do plan to have an episode of the Automation Podcast every week through the end of the year. However, my other shows, especially my live shows I do at lunchtime, there's going to be fewer of those as I concentrate on finishing up all the open projects I have for 2024. So I just wanted to put that out there. I will still be here every day if you want to call me, if potentially you want to come in and do some training with me, or if you want to do some one-on-one, or if you're a vendor and you want to come on the show. I'm still working every day, all day, but for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to be crunch time because I don't want to get to my vacation right before the holidays and feel like stressed out, work, 16-hour days and all that. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but there still should be weekly episodes of the Automation Podcast as well as new episodes of the Automation Show and the Friday Q&A and student Q&A that follows for that 12:30 to 1:30 period afterwards. So I wanted to just let you guys know that. And with that, we're going to jump into a show where I sit down with Paceless Greg Champion to learn about the PRTG OPC server. And I think you guys will find this very interesting. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the show. Greg, thank you for coming on the show. I'm really looking forward to learning all about PRTG's OPC UA server. But before we get to that, I just want to remind the audience, if you're not familiar with PRTG, this is some really cool software. Grew up in IT monitoring, and now it does OT monitoring as well. And Greg's going to show us some really cool stuff you can do with the OPC UA server. But if you want to know more about the basics of PRTG, check out podcast 199. Yes, that's right, 199. Back in April, we did a real deep dive on the product and what it can do. It's really cool stuff. So if you're looking for those kind of like those dashboards that you normally get from your historian or from your analytics from your SCADA system, but you want it for your network and your PLCs and your IPCs, this is what PRTG can do for you. Now, with that said, I'm going to pitch it over to you, Greg, and let you tell us just a little bit about yourself before we jump into learning all about PRTG and how we can implement the OPC UA server.
Thanks so much for having me, Sean. Yeah, I've been with Paceler for about 12 years now. I'm one of the engineers that's been working on this product, and we've been working with a lot of our customers trying to fine tune it and make sure that people can get that IT OT convergence, viewpoint for their networks and for their OT networks.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on. We're actually not just going to do a PowerPoint slide, folks. We're actually going to go in and take a look at the software. So I'll turn it right back to you, Greg.
Awesome. So if you haven't seen the PRTG episode, just to cover it briefly, PRTG basically is set up in a way that has devices, groups, and sensors. So what we have here is the device tree of PRTG. You can see there's different probes. Probes are going to be services that run on a Windows box that are going to go out and monitor different devices. They use different protocols for this. So the main one that we started with was SNMP. Since then, though, we've moved on to WMI. We've now moved on to also industrial standards like Modbus, MQTT, OPC-UA. And so what PRTG does is you have this local probe, you set up those devices, you set up the different sensors. Those are going to be your basic checks. When we're talking about checks, it's going to be a variety of different metrics. So, for example, for a firewall, you're going to have a ping, you're going to have SNMP uptime, whether the SSL certificate's good or not, whether or not HTTP and HTTPS are answering, and then also the statistics on the network interfaces, for example. For a server, you're going to see things like how much memory is being used currently, what the CPU load is, how much hard drive space is remaining, things like that. When we talk about more industrial PCs and things like that, what we're able to do there is also do CPU load, but also check to see if the OPC certificate's valid, if the server status is up and running, and also see things like system health. So we're going to be able to pull those metrics via the OPC protocol to show you what's happening on that system. This is an example of a CPU load sensor that's actually reading through the OPC sensor. So we're pulling that directly from in this case, the industrial PC via the OPC standard. Once you have those devices and you have all those sensors in PRTG, what you can then do is start building up maps or dashboards. So every object that you have within PRTG, whether it's a sensor, whether it's a device, whether it's a group, you can take those things, you can put them into a map, and then you can visualize it in kind of a dashboard or however you want it to be displayed. But we have a bunch of different types of widgets that will constantly update, like you just saw. So it's going to show you the most recent graphs that are there, the most recent metrics that are there. If you have a big group of things that you want to monitor kind of at a glance to see if anything's down or not, then you can use something like a sunburst. We also have different lists that you can use. So you can have like here, the longest system uptime, the shortest system uptime, things like that. And then you can also put in your own graphics into the maps themselves to be able to visualize better, either whether it's a floor plan or whether it's like this, where it's a water system where you can actually show, okay, this is the system itself that's being monitored right now, and this is its status. So these kinds of maps and building dashboards with these maps is super valuable and something that a lot of our customers do.
Yeah, let me interrupt here for a minute, just for the audio audience. You have a SCADA system, you're building a SCADA system. Today we're going to look at Ignition, but we've had so many SCADA companies on the show over the years. And when you're building a SCADA system, it knows all about tags and PLCs, right? I mean, that's what it does. But it
Right.
doesn't know SMMP. It doesn't know WMI, right? So PRTG knows how to get that stuff and instantiate all those different variables that you want. You don't have to take them all, but the ones you want. So it makes it easy for you to build a dashboard. For the audio audience, we're seeing a bunch of gauges and different graphs and trends and list of objects. We even have a graphic on the screen with overlays on it. It allows you to build that very easily, so you can monitor the health of your network switches, your IPCs, your PLCs. And you can bring a lot of that stuff into the SCADA system, but it's not always easy. Sometimes it requires add-on blocks or function blocks, and this doesn't require any of that. So I just wanted to throw that out there for the audio audience, and let me turn it back to you, Greg.
No, that's a great point. I mean, built into PRTG, we support over 15 different types of protocols. We have what we call these sensors. So we have prepackaged sensors. We have over 305 of those sensors for monitoring things like Cisco switches or PLCs, where if you just give the PRTG the device's IP address and you tell it to auto-discover a device, it's going to try to find any and every important metric that's available. And then you can pick and choose which ones are important to you. So now that we have this an idea of what PRTG does, we want to talk more specifically about the OPC server. So the reason we built the OPC server is because a lot of times, if you already have a system set up in a SCADA system, if you already have something like a dashboard set up in an HMI, for example, then you don't want to use the maps or the dashboards that come from PRTG. You'd like to get the data out of PRTG and into your SCADA system. And so the idea behind the OPC server was that we have a server running that interfaces with PRTG's API. It's actually interfacing with the newest API that we just came out with, the API v2. And what you do within PRTG is you're going to tag specific sensors or devices or groups. So you can see here there's a tag that says OPC Once we have that OPC tag in there, we run the OPC server, and anything with that tag, it's going to go and it's going to query PRTG's API as a certain interval that you set, and it's going to pull that data out of PRTG so that you can put it into a SCADA system. So what I'm going to show now is this is a dashboard that we've built with Ignition, where you're seeing kind of the standard, I mean, it's simulated data. It's for like a milk processing plant, and you're going to see the different data coming in like you would with a normal SCADA system. The difference here is that we also have an overlay of our network. So with this, we're then going to be able to see how all those things are actually interconnected. So it's not just going to be, is the device up or down? Is there a specific value being shown? It's actually going to show you the whole entire chain of how the data is getting from one point to the next point. And a lot of that data is not going to be available in a normal SCADA system. And it's not easy to get that data out of the switches or the network or whatever it might be, as John mentioned earlier. So that's what PureDG and the OPC UA server is really bringing to the table, is the ability to set up network and OT monitoring within PureDG and then take that data and put it into your SCADA system so that you have full visibility about what's happening. And when something goes down, if it's the result of a switch going out for some reason, or a port going down, or a hard drive being full, you know that that's the reason for it and not the actual device itself. And so you're going to send the right technician out to fix the right problem instead of sending somebody out to maybe fix a PLC when it's not the PLC, it's actually the switch that's behind it that's connected to. So the way that we set this up is, if we go to our ignition system here and we take a look at the different OPC connections, what we're going to do is, once you have that OPC UA server up and running, it's just a standard program that you can run on Windows or on Linux. You can even run it next to PureDG core itself. You put in a configuration file for that to tell it, where to look for PureDG and what tag to look for. And then once it's there, it's going to be serving up the OPC UA information over the standard port of 4840. That's something else that you can configure in the software. But for this purpose, we're going to connect up the OPC UA server that we have running currently. We click on next. It's going to find that server, ask us to choose it. And then you have different endpoints. So on this server, we have a bunch of different security policies enabled, just to kind of illustrate what the OPC UA server is capable of. And for now, we're just going to take none because it's easier. And we give it a name, and for now, we don't need a password. We create that OPC UA connection. It's going to try to connect. So Ignition's OPC UA module is trying to connect to our OPC UA server. Once it's connected, which it is, then we should be able to see it within the actual designer. So if we switch over here to the designer, we can see the different tags that we have here. And if we go into here and say browse devices, we're going to see that new OPC UA server that we just added. And within this OPC UA server, the way that we're serving up the data is in twofold. So underneath this root group, which is corresponding to the root group that we have here. So in PureDG itself, the way that we've design the device tree is that you have a root group. At the root group is where you can set like a lot of settings that will then be inherited by everything else. And then you have your different probes. So if we look back at Ignition here, we see we have that same root group. We have those same probes. So the local probe, the multi-platform probe, the core server, the remote probe. And then underneath those things, whatever we've tagged with the OPC UA tag is going to pop up underneath there. So if we take a look at softing, we can take a look at the system temperature specifically, and then going down to the temperatures, going down into the channels, you're going to be able to see things like temperature. You're going to be able to see the last message of the sensor. You're going to be able to see the name of the sensor, what type it is, what the status is. And so basically we need to bring these tags into Ignition. And once we have them there, then we can start using them with different objects within Ignition itself. So if we take a look at this one, for example, this is what I just set up. It's an error message. We're taking this directly from this Riddle IoT interface, the CMC temperature sensor, and we're taking that last message from that sensor and displaying it directly in the SCADA system. And if we take a look at PRTG, that device, we can see what I mean by the last message is for every single sensor, if there is an issue, or if there's also, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't have to be an error. Some of the OPC UA custom sensor can also go to a specific node in an OPC UA server, take that message and put it into a sensor as well. So this message can honestly be defined pretty much by the customer as they feel necessary. But if there is an issue, typically that does pop up in the last message, and then you can take that message and put it directly into your SCADA system. For the status and for the different color codings that we have here, what we did there is we take a link. So this one is going to be for this Cisco Business 350 stack. We're taking the status. So in PRTG, for a device, the different statuses map to different values. This is all in the handbook that we include with the OPC server, what the different statuses mean, and for the devices and as well as for the sensors. And then basically you just map those different status numbers to different colors. And then when something does go down or goes into a warning state, it pops up as red or yellow or green or however you want it to be. These are just two really simple examples of some stuff that you can do. Some other things that we've done with these types of systems is if, for example, a specific server goes down, we grab that last message from that server and then display it. So, like if you have an ERP system that has a high CPU load or has a hard drive that's full, it goes into a down state, an error state, and then you can take that error message directly out of PRTG through the OPC UA server and display it in the actual view that you're looking at. And that's pretty much how you integrate PRTG with the OPC server and then use the OPC client that's built into Ignition to pull that data from the OPC server and put it into different Ignition perspectives and views.
All right, so let's recap here a little bit. So we got PRTG, which we covered back in podcast 199, which is, it began its life as IT monitoring, but, moved into OT monitoring as well. Being able to get out there and talk to, not just computers, industrial PCs, and not just industrial switches that are managed switches with the features like SNMP that can provide that kind of data, but also talk directly to devices there out in the field via different mechanisms. And that was great, but when getting that information up in the IT realm around the PRTG server and the reports and the dashboards, that's one thing. But what you have with this OPC UA server is now a way to get it back out of PRTG and send it back to any OPC UA client. So your OPC client could be a SCADA system like Ignition, right?
Exactly.
Now we're saying OPC UA, right? That's the current version of OPC that we're using. If you have a legacy system, it may not support OPC UA. The other thing is, you may have an HMI that can be an OPC UA client, right?
Yeah.
Or you may even have there are actually PLCs out there now that are OPC UA servers and clients. So it allows you to get that information. Maybe there's not an add-on instruction or function block for the particular network switch or device or the information on your IPC that you want to know in the PLC. Well, this would be one way to get it in there. But I think the biggest use case is what you showed here, where you have a layout for the audio audience. We have like the physical device, like the boiler in the field or the tower in the field, and then we're going to the PLC, and then from the PLC we go to the industrial switch, and then from the industrial switch we're going to the, maybe it's a Fortinet firewall like you had in yours, and so we're stepping through each of those, and we can see the status of those, just like you would do any what we would call in the Allen Bradley world, we call it a multi-state indicator, or just any type of properties of any type of object, right? So I'm teaching WinCC right now, so we do that in there as well with its diamondization of the different objects. And so I'm teaching that right now in my course. But in any case, you can see that there. And so we have this information. If we close this window, we can see that we've overlaid some other information on top of the SCADA screen. So it's just not variables coming from the PLC. This is information also coming to us from PRTG. And that's, does that make sense? Did I sum it up right?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's pretty exciting because I know I shouldn't say several, a few of the audience members have contacted me and we've talked about some pretty big issues they've had in their facilities when their network switches either got overloaded or their IPCs got overloaded. And it it caused downtime and hurt production. And so why weren't they monitoring? Well, there was no easy way to monitor some of those devices, right? A lot of times if you don't have the same brand name, not a lot of SCADA engineers out there are trying to implement SNMP into their SCADA system. Well, PRTG does that, right? They just do that, and they can serve it back to you via OPC UA. But no, I don't have any questions. Just so the audience knows, we kind of did a dry run beforehand, so I had a lot of my questions answered in that. But Greg, let me kick it back to you. Did we miss anything? Was there anything else you wanted to talk about while I have you?
No, I mean, really just at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish is to give people that operational knowledge of knowing exactly what's happening everywhere. Our network monitoring, our software started off doing just network monitoring. And we always tried to be vendor agnostic and, try to support as many different protocols and as many different types of devices as we can. And we continue to do that. We try to make sure that we create enough sensors that it's easy to monitor your network, but if you really want to dig into it, you can as well with custom sensors, whether it's custom SNMP, WMI, OPC UA, whatever. And so we allow for that high level of customization to get that last, 10%. It's like when you set up PRTG, you can get maybe 75 to 90% of your stuff monitored, and then that last 10%, you're gonna have to do some custom stuff, but we allow you to do that, and it doesn't cost anything extra. That's one thing I did want to mention that you said is that all the sensors, all the functionality that you've seen within PRTG, all those different sensor types, including stuff is as complicated as like NetFlow sensors. All that's included in every single license of PRTG, and the OPC UA server is an extra license outside of PRTG. I will say that. But for what the benefit is, we think it's definitely worth the money.
Yeah, and this is something you're probably going to buy on a plant level. You're not going to buy this for each particular line. That typically wouldn't make sense because you want to monitor all your switches in the plant. So with that, I would tell people if you want to know more about PRTG minus the OPC UA part of it, which we did not cover today, check out podcast 199. And Greg also has a great page up that I'll put these links in the description too, where you can, well, let me let you go ahead and talk about this page.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that it's working right now is that basically, if you want to have a trial with us, you have to contact us. We'll get one together as soon as we can. And typically speaking, if you do request a trial from us, ask us if you want us to help you set it up, if you want to have a demo of it. If you want to see it and see if it's going to work for you or ask questions to us, feel free to contact us. We can do a demo for you. If you want to just jump straight in feet first, you can also request the trial. The trial goes for 30 days. And yeah, we just want people to test it out, to try it out, see if it's working for them. If they're having issues with it, we have engineers like myself and others who can help you out, getting it set up, getting the stuff monitored like you want it to be monitored. So feel free to contact us with any requests like that.
Yeah, and I'm going to just throw in there, if you're an OT guy like me and not an IT guy, I highly recommend the demo. Greg actually showed me behind the scenes how it's all set up. And while it makes sense, I'm not sure that my history in industrial automation prepared me for all the settings that had to be done, right? So I definitely recommend if this is something you want to do, ask them to give you a demo. They're more than happy to do it, and that'll give you a good idea before you just download the software and say, okay, now what do I do? Right. And so I would just throw that caveat out there because I know a lot of you guys out there, don't come from that IT background. But in any case, any final words, Greg, before we close out the show?
No, I really appreciate you having me on here, and I'm glad we got to talk about this. And yeah, hopefully we can start solving some problems for people.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I want to thank Greg for coming on the show and bringing us back up to speed on PRTG, as well as showing us how you can use their new OPC UA server to get information about your network switches and your other devices, your PLCs and IPCs, into your SCADA system. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I want to thank Paessler for sponsoring this episode. It was completely ad-free. Wasn't that nice? I love it when the vendor sponsors the shows so I can put extra effort into editing them and so they can be ad-free for you guys, our awesome audience. And speaking about being our audience, please give us a like, a sub, and a share. That is the fuel that keeps this show on the air and coming back every week. Without those, we can't grow the show and we can't find new vendors to come on. So if you're on the audio platforms, I know a lot of you are, then please give us a 5-star review. They're a little bit different than the thumbs up and whatnot. We need the reviews over there to find new audience members and new vendors. And with that, of course, if anybody needs to get in touch with me, maybe you're a vendor, you want to come on the show, or if you're a student or potential student, you want me to do some consulting or one-on-one training, or even some configuration and testing, please reach out to me, Sean Tierney at insightsandautomation.com. And with that, I want to wish you all an awesome week. I want to wish you good health and happiness. And until next time, my friends, peace.